trying to get used to a camera. Now that I'm seeing myself, I'm like more self-conscious and no. This weekend I am, look at this, not this. Well, this weekend I am prepping for, or going to attempt to prep for Dapper Day at Walt Disney World 2024, spring 2024. The first day, Dapper Day takes place in Epcot, which is the Flower and Garden Festival, hence the flowers. And the second day is going to be at Magic Kingdom, hence the more princessy, whimsical kind of look.
Hi, I'm going to stop right here because I realized that I did not explain what Dapper Day was. I just assumed that everyone knew what Dapper Day was. So I'm going to go ahead and go on their website and go directly to their statement that describes what Dapper Day is all about. So, according to the website, what is Dapper Day? Started in February 2011 by Los Angeles designer Justin J. Dapper Day is an organization that celebrates fun, refined style from yesterday and today. Best known for producing events that let you step out in style at museums, amusement parks, and other destinations. Now, we skip down here, which is what we're talking about today. Says we're most famous for our Dapper Day outings in Disney parks, which are usually held twice a year in spring and in fall near Los Angeles, Orlando, and sometimes Paris. Our Disney events usually include a Dapper Day outing into the parks, plus other happenings outside of the park at the parks, such as Dapper Day Boutique or a pop-up expo. So, for example, in Disneyland in California, they have a whole Dapper Day Expo. I believe this year is their final expo. And when I say this year, I mean April of 2025. The video that we're talking about of the outfits were for 2024. And just something to be clear that although they work closely with Disney, Dapper Day organization is not, I repeat, not associated nor part of the Walt Disney company. So Disney allows Dapper Day to happen at the parks as long as it's not costumes. So you can't do any costumes like character costumes or anything like that. Instead, what you can do is bounding. Bounding is when you wear outfits that resemble a character or have the colors of a Disney character. I've done that a couple times. It's not a requirement for Dapper Day, it's just an extra layer that people like to add to their outfits. It's really just stepping out in style. It also doesn't have to be vintage. I like to go on the vintage side, most people do, but it's just stepping out in style. So, refined style from yesterday and today. So, it's not a requirement that it is vintage, is not a requirement that you are bounding as a character. It's just a choice. But yes, to be clear, it is not associated with the Walt Disney Company. And if you want to know more about their Dapper Day story, how it started, and where it originated, there's a whole explanation on their website, and I'll have links to all of this down in the description box.
Normally, in the past, I've made several dresses and outfits for Dapper Day. And for the last 2 or 3 Dapper Days, I've been an outfit repeater just because I haven't had time to sew. I haven't had a proper sewing room, proper time to plan and sew and fit. And this particular season, I don't quite fit into the clothes that I've made. I was walking around with my mom and we passed by a store, and in the window I saw this. This particular outfit instantly reminded me of the 1930s. Nice, flowy, spring, long, and most importantly, roomy. There's so much room in this dress. It's great. It is modern. It's a modern dress. I'm trying to style this to be 1930s, hence the hat. But there are a few things we have to change. One, I need to change the black ribbon. I'm going to do a brown ribbon. The accessories for this particular outfit is going to be brown. So I have these lovely glasses that I got from Nancy's Vintage over in downtown DeLand. They're very reminiscent of the very round sunglasses from 1930s. They're a little larger than what you would normally see, but it works. And then I have this straw hat and a rogue hair that I've yet to wear, but if I do this, you flip the back. And then the idea is to have a little updo right here. 1930s was a very interesting era because it was a transition era from the 1920s to the 1940s. So you go from, you know, very straight to a bit of an A-line, or on your way to an A-line skirt, something a little bit more fitted in the waist. So you have that transitionary period of having, you know, the 1920s morphing into the 1940s. So for this particular dress, what I would like to do is cut out the back. A lot of dresses in the 1930s had a low back with a bow or a velvet bow or some kind of thing decorating the backside. It's wearable right now. It's wearable right now. So technically I don't need to do anything to it, but if I had time and the energy and felt like it, I'll go ahead and do that. This chiffon strapless sort of halter top dress was my mother's from, I think it was early 2000s, really early 2000s, and it's a beautiful, beautiful dress. There is a stain over here. Where is it? Where's the stain? Haha, I found you. There's a stain. There's a stain there that I have to tackle first. If worse comes to worse, there's a ribbon that ties in the front that could always pin to hide that stain. Well, we're good. Problem is, this dress is definitely too big on me, and I will show you right now. So at first glance, this dress looks fine. It fits fine, but it's actually not fine. Look how big that is. I have to take up like that much, but I don't want to ruin the ruching in the front, so we're gonna attempt taking this in from the sides so that, you know, this is nicely tucked away. Other than that, there's room for me to eat, even though I'm not going to eat a whole lot in Magic Kingdom. I do like the corn dogs, and I do like the Cheshire cattail dessert. That's delicious. Anywho, I do want to be comfortable and swoosh around in Magic Kingdom, and I'll show you how swooshy this dress is. The other thing I want to do is I want to move these halter top ties a little bit more to the sides. I'm a fan of when the halter top comes out further to like the armpit area. So for instant gratification, so that I feel enticed to keep sewing, we're going to do the very easy fix of just switching the ribbon off of this hat, moving on to the next important one so that this is more wearable, and then finally going to alter the backside of this particular dress.
The hat is obviously the easiest part of all of this. I cut out as much of the existing ribbon as I could. There was a stray stitch on the top edge of this ribbon, but I didn't want to waste time seam ripping all of it. I left it and I just covered it with the ribbon that I chose, which was a brown ribbon at first. You'll see later on in this video at the end that I used the leftover green satin fabric that I had purchased for the alterations of the dress and incorporated into this hat instead so it can match a little better. When adding a ribbon to a hat like this, you don't necessarily have to do a stitch all around. You can just tack it on in 4 points on the top part and the bottom part, so 8 stitches in total, or 8 points in total, and it'll stay in place. It also makes it easier for you to remove and replace on a later date if you want to, a little less permanent. Up next is what I like to call the periwinkle dress. I turned it inside out so that the lining on was one side and the outside of the dress was on the other. And the first thing I needed to do was to remove the boning from the sides of the dress so I can take it in. I did not put this boning back in. That's something that I didn't feel the dress needed. You have to be careful with the seam ripper. You'll see here that I made a hole. Thankfully, it was on the seam allowance of the dress, but you have to be very careful with chiffon fabric like this. It's very delicate. And then the next thing that I did was remove or separate the top of the bodice to the midsection of the bodice. There's a lot of ruching and you have to be very delicate with it, but these were attached together after they were sewn on the sides. I want to attach the top and the bottom together so that I can take the sides in. It will make it a lot easier for any future alterations as well. And I went in very delicately, picking the seams one by one so that I don't accidentally rip any of the fabric from the ruching. This is probably the most tedious part of this process. After that, putting it together is very quick and very easy. Onto the floral dress, I started by cutting the backside open. I could have ripped it open, but the dress was serged together and that would have taken forever. Since I was going to cut away this portion of the dress, I not mind at all just taking scissors to it. I was very careful when I got down to the V to not cut too much because I will eventually have to sew that back together. So for this piece, I wanted to make sure that both sides were even, and I cut out the same amount that I did on the right side as I did with the left side. But before I cut it out, I want to make sure that there is a seam allowance. So this is me marking the seam allowance on that piece before I cut it out, which I'll then use that piece that I cut out to trace it over to the other side, and it's perfectly even. Later on, I took two different thicknesses of two different ribbons and attached it to the bodice. I just pinned it on so I can have a better visual of what thickness I would like to cut the green fabric out of.
Yes, I prefer this much more dark.
Later on, I marked the thickness of the ribbon onto the fabric so that I know where the stitching line would be. Eventually I'll cut off all this excess, but in the meantime I just kept it on there so that the dress won't fall apart, and I use it as a base to trace off the pieces that I need to make a pattern out of. I then took those draped pattern pieces, transferred them onto a tracing paper that you see here, and added a seam allowance all the way all around. Now there are certain points where I didn't need to add seam allowance, but I would take it away later on as I went. I made sure to label every single part of the pieces, as well as putting registration marks. Those are the marks in which the pattern pieces attach to either the garment or to the pieces themselves. I also took note of how many pieces of interfacing and how many lining pieces I needed to cut out. Once those pattern pieces were created, it was time to cut it out of the main fabric. For the center neckline, I cut it on a fold, but I made sure that it was on grain. But when it came to the diagonal pieces in the back as well as the ribbon, I made sure to cut those strips on a bias so it had a bit of stretch to it. For this project, I'm using Microtex needles, which are a desirable choice for slippery and thinner, more delicate fabrics. The first thing I did was attach the neckline pieces to the back pieces. I attached the interfacing to the lining, the backside of the lining, for all the neckline pieces and the back pieces as well to prevent it from stretching. Then I attached those pieces together. Once those pieces are together, I attach the lining to the front of the fabric. Once together, you press them open, and then you go back in to understitch the seam allowance to the lining. This will keep that stitch and that fold crisp and laying flat against your body. Once all those pieces are attached together, it's time to attach them to the dress. So I treated this green piece similar to how you treat bias tape. So you attach the front piece to the dress first, flip it over, and then I carefully stitch in the ditch along the front of the dress to catch the back side of the fabric on the other side. And that way the edge of the dress is fully encased in this piece. The final step in this whole process, creating that long, beautiful ribbon that I'm going to put in the back of the dress. To make a nice long piece of fabric, a nice long tubing of it, I basically created very long, very thick bias tape. Once those pieces are together, I press them open. So right sides together to create a very long tube, fold it inside out, and close that opening shut to create a nice pretty ribbon.
Better cross, Cindy. Hi, Pluto. Hello. There you go. Royalty right here.
I should write something, you know, like a storyboard of what I'm supposed to be saying. Instead, I'm here trying to wing it, which is not ideal, but here we are.